You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical, tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1324. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. And Happy New Year! Today, it's January 1st, kicking off the new year, 2026. We're so excited to be kicking off this new year with you. If you've been following us for most of this last year, you'll know we've brought in all sorts of different people on different topics where we want to help you thrive. We want you to do well. We want you to know the operations of your business, but we also want you to love your practice. We want you to know those clinical skills to be able to think through all the different aspects of what you want to contribute through your practice, to your clients, your community, or the broader world. Which is why I'm so excited today to have Dr. Douglas Flemons, who is a psychotherapist, a professor, and author of books and articles on clinical hypnosis, brief therapy, sex therapy, suicide assessment, supervision, writing, and systemic thinking. His new book, Empathic Engagement in Clinical Practice, is published by APA, and during his 30-year academic career, Douglas taught and supervised clinical graduate students, directed 2 mental health clinics, and co-directed his university's Office of Suicide and Violence Prevention. He and his wife live and maintain a private practice in North Carolina, and he prevents workshops internationally. Douglas, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thanks so much, Joe. Delighted to be here.
Yeah, I know you have your new book, Empathetic Engagement in Clinical Practice, which we're definitely going to get to, but with so many other different areas that you have expertise in, I have to ask, were they things that kind of at different phases in career you got excited about, or were they things that it sort of always, you were interested in all these different topics throughout?
There is a sort of a through line. Empathy is a through line through most of the various areas that I focused on, but I have been inspired by circumstances. When I was running a mental health clinic, we had a lot of clients who were very troubled, struggling a lot. And so I was training my staff in suicide assessment and prevention, and a book came out of those trainings. Sex therapy, I was teaching a course with my wife on sex therapy, so it just made sense for a book to come out of that.
I love it. You're just a constant creator and coming up with creative ideas and clinical implementation.
Yeah, I can't help myself.
I do think that when you're someone that has ideas, and I would say that I've written a few self-published books, but my one book with HarperCollins, it's like you just start getting these ideas and they need a place to live or they just move on.
Developing ideas is the most exciting thing. There's something always going on at the back of your head.
Yeah. How do you hone in on which ideas to focus on?
They usually come to me and they won't leave me alone. So when I was writing the book before this one was on hypnotherapy, and I had a whole section on empathy. And as that book came to a close, I thought I could write an article just about empathy, which I did for the Psychotherapy Networker. And that was so much fun, I thought I could turn this into a book. So it's just like I find a topic, it intrigues me, and then I keep thinking about it, keep developing.
Love that. Well, let's talk about empathy. So what do you think most therapists get wrong when it comes to how they think about empathy?
Not only therapists, but researchers. When I first started thinking about writing this book, because I've been thinking about and teaching empathy for 30 years, I thought it would be fairly straightforward. I really didn't know much about the literature. So when I started to dig in to see, okay, so what's the research showing and various ideas, I found a confounding swamp of ideas. Everybody was
Swamp of
talking
ideas.
at each other, and uh, and nobody agreed on what it was. Everybody agreed that it was important, but they didn't know or didn't come to a common understanding of what it is, or how you should do it, or what the effects are, or anything. So I spent a long time. It took me about a year to sort through and come up with a way of orienting to it that made sense to me.
Mm. And what is it? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, so a lot of people conflate it with or mistake it for sympathy. Uh, I went and started looking at etymologies to try to figure out what the difference is. And in fact, the word empathy was coined in 1908 by Titchener as a translation of a German word, Einfühlung, that had been used in German philosophy in the 1800s, 1900s. And so he came up with the term empathy using the root of the word, the pathy part of it, sympathy, empathy, the pathy part of it means to feel or to suffer. With sympathy, the sim part of it is to feel together or to suffer together, to suffer with. Empathy was to suffer or to feel into. So it's a way of knowing someone else, and you do that by way of projecting your imagination into their experience. Sympathy comes to you if you're struggling and we're having a meaningful conversation and I care about you, then I can start to feel what you're feeling. That's sympathy. I can feel bad for you. That's also a quality of sympathy or sympathetic concern. But when I start getting curious about what your experience is, what's informing the struggle, how does it make sense from you? Now we're into the realm of empathy, and it's something that I seek out to do. Sympathy arrives on your plate. It bubbles up as a function of being human, but empathy is a choice, and it's an engagement that requires ultimately, or best practices, a lot of skill.
Yeah, I love breaking down the actual word side of it. To me, I think that's really helpful to think of sympathy as being with. It just kind of bubbles up. If someone's parent dies and your parent maybe hasn't died or has died, that you feel that emotion with them, versus going into with that idea of empathy. And even just breaking down that word helps kind of compartmentalize it for me.
Great, yes. A lot of practitioners end up finding it problematic when they mistake it as sympathy, because being emotionally available to your clients can take a toll. It becomes not availability, but vulnerability. And so I've had a lot of students over the years that are concerned that if they stay in this empathic relationship with their clients, it's going to be a struggle for them. But with an approach to how to take care of yourself and how to engage in empathy effectively, it's actually an enhancement, both an enhancement of the relationship and an enhancement of it being a more meaningful job, more meaningful career.
What does it look like when people think they're being empathetic and maybe they aren't as empathetic as they think they are?
Okay, so you tell me that your parent has recently died. And if I say, yeah, both my parents are gone, I understand what you're going through. That's layperson understanding of or conceptualization of what empathy is. But it isn't. It's a comparison. If you're my friend, then us mutually comparing experiences can be a way of building rapport, building closeness. You're vulnerable with me. I just lost my parent. I tell you about a story of mine losing my parent, and we get closer as a function of it. There's a mutuality to it. Empathy is not mutual. Empathy is complementary or asymmetrical. You describe to me an experience or a feeling or whatever that's gone on for you, and I get curious about what your experience is. And I can demonstrate empathy by virtue of reflecting back, or I would put it refracting back what your experience is, but not claiming that I know, and not assuming up front that I know just because I've had what I conceive to be a comparable experience.
Mm. Okay. So that idea of really reflecting and then you don't claim that you know. I think that even as I hear, I had a friend recently whose wife died by suicide, and I over and over heard people say, "Oh, I couldn't imagine," and you could just like it just was the same thing over and over, and a lot of us could imagine, and but that doesn't mean that's what he needed in that moment. As therapists, I love how you parse out the difference between a friendship where maybe you're comparing stories of, oh yeah, I also lost a parent, versus, in therapy that it's much different. Let's dig into a little more of what you cover in the book. Like, what does the research show? What do we, as therapists, a lot of us, been out of grad school 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and we keep up with our continuing ed, but, the things that we are taught about empathy in our practicums probably aren't as accurate anymore as what they could be. So what's the kind of quick update that we should give, maybe the master class from Douglas, of what do we need to know now that the research points to regarding empathy, specifically in that clinical environment?
A good question. When I was in graduate school, I was taught pat phrases. What I'm hearing you say is, and I was taught to conceptualize it as I'm reading on your face what's going on, and I'm going to accurately infer what's happening and then give it back to you with these kind of stock phrases. You've had the experience of hearing people use stock phrases that ends up feeling alienating, like they're in a rote unfolding rather than a search for meaning. So if you let go of there's a right way to say it, and you fire up your imagination, and I love what you said about people feeling a failure of imagination when confronted with somebody that's really had a horrific experience. Layperson, you can understand a failure of imagination. I've never had a close person take their life, so right off the bat, I can't imagine. It is actually not a horrible thing to say, I think, because it's marking the unique pain that the person is in and the listener's incapacity to be able to take it all in and do justice to it. But as therapists, our job is to do precisely that. So you fire up your imagination to make sense of what it would be like to lose somebody, and you do that by zooming into the context, the story that is their life, or that at least is these set of circumstances. Standard knee-jerk idea about empathy is you put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Not the best idea. Because if I put myself in that person or your friend's shoes, I'm bringing all of me into a circumstance where I've lost somebody. And that's not the same as being them having lost somebody and who that is in their life and so on. So if you bring yourself along for the ride, you end up misconstruing often the import and never really getting to the heart of what the person's experience is. You can easily get to the place where you become judgmental. Well, if I had been in your shoes, I wouldn't have done what you did. Or if I were in your shoes, I wouldn't be feeling, why are you feeling the way you are? Because I'm imagining myself there. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't feel that. So it can keep you divided. What I suggest in the book, rather, is that you leave yourself at the door and you just project your imagination. And much like an actor embodies a character, you do your best to become, in your imagination, the client and you're looking around at what they're going through and where they've just come from and what they're facing and what this means to them and how it's devastating them from inside the logic of their world.
Yeah, I love that idea of when we try to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, we're bringing all of our own baggage into that and our own lens, and how instead of being curious and just hearing them explain what it's like to be in their shoes and to use your imagination to embody a different character, to me that's just such a better way of thinking through it.
Yeah, and it then allows you to not only go in, but also come out. Because it's a choice, and because you're actively managing your imagination in order to be able to, and it's your embodied imagination. It's not just an intellectual idea, but you're bringing your body along for the ride. You don't bring yourself along for the ride, your whole world, your sensibility, but you bring along the way that your body manufactures sensation and so on, so that as you are projected into the person's experience, you're doing your best to feel what it would be like to be feeling their body, their reality.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that you're saying this, but I've heard critique of kind of the idea of a therapist being just a blank slate, and to really understand our own biases, understand our own ways, and even sometimes name that in the sessions. Is it possible for us to fully just jump into imagination and to not pull ourselves kind of into there, like our whole mindset? And I think, if it's not, how do we continue to have that imagination going into it without bringing too much of ourselves into that empathy?
Certainly stuff is going to show up. It's what you do with it when it does. History, your own history, whatever. Judgment. What you do is you turn towards it and you acknowledge it, much like a qualitative researcher will acknowledge biases in order to, as they would say, bracket them and then them not intrude in the middle of whatever research they're doing. Same sort of thing. Something occurs to you as a judgment, and you don't pretend that you don't have it, but you acknowledge it to yourself. A whole other conversation about whether to acknowledge it with the client, but you acknowledge it to yourself as a way for it not to continue to inform how it is that you're proceeding in the conversation. And then again, you attempt to, as best you can, not turn back towards yourself to try to make meaning about the client's experience, but to do it as a full-blown inside metaphoric engagement with what their world is.
Mm-hmm. I want to thank Headway for sponsoring this episode. As a group practice leader, you know that insurance and admin work can take up hours every week. Time you could be spending with clients or growing your team. Benefits reset season is the perfect opportunity to make improvements to those processes. That's why I personally recommend Headway for group practices. Headway lightens your load with fast and free insurance credentialing and admin support, plus offers competitive per-session rates and bi-weekly payments your team can count on. They're the only platform designed specifically for in-network group practices, and they work with therapy, psychiatric, and hybrid groups of all sizes. Thousands of group practice leaders use Headway to simplify insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. The best part, there's no subscription fees. Now's a great time to join. With Headway, you'll be helping more people get the care they deserve while supporting your team with more clients and a lighter admin load. Make next year the best year yet for your group practice. Head on over to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe to book a tour. What do you think has helped you? You said you and your wife in the bio both have a private practice. Take us through when maybe your empathy wasn't the strongest, and then what you did to build that up.
Tell a story in the book of when I was a graduate student. We had a clinic, and I happened to be in the clinic when we had a walk-in. This guy comes in, he has mirrored sunglasses. He wants a session right then. I invite him in, have him sit down, and he never takes his sunglasses off. And he says, I'm here because my wife says I need therapy. Great, okay, so how can I help? And he ends up telling me a story that she's left him. This is the second time she's left him, and he doesn't know where she is, but he's fed up with her leaving him. A precondition for her to come back is for him to get therapy, and so that's why he's here. And he has a plan for when she comes back, she's not leaving again. She's not leaving. She's not taking the kids away again. He's had it up to here. No way that he's going to put up with that. And it becomes clear that he's planning on threatening to kill her if she were to leave again. And that the therapy is a vehicle to get her, to convince her it's now safe for you to come back. The guy scared the shit out of me. I had cold sweat on the back of my neck. And the only thing I could think about was the danger to the woman. And I did not join with him at all. I considered him to be alien, other, and I ended the session telling him I have a duty to warn your wife if I can find her. And I thought at the time where I was that I also had a responsibility to call the police, and I informed him of that too. And he said to me, "You don't have to do that. I won't tell anybody I was here." And I thanked him for his protection of me, but that I was going to go ahead and report it. So it was, therapeutically, it was a disaster. I was absolutely no help to him. I did make a call to women in distress and had somebody there pass on what I presumed would have been where his wife was to let her know that she needed to be concerned. But I could not bridge that gap at all. Years later, I worked with a guy who tortured his girlfriend's cats. And I was successful at getting inside of his experience and making sense of how he basically was addicted to the rush. He would, as he said, get cottonmouth on the way home from work, imagining going and doing the torturing with his girlfriend not there. I was the supervisor of a practicum at the time, and one of my students was supposed to be his therapist, and she couldn't do it, understandably. She was, in fact, a cat, not only just a cat lover, but she was an advocate for safety of animals. So for her, this man was a complete monster, and she couldn't bring herself to even watch from behind the one-way mirror. But I did manage to get inside of his world and make sense of it in a way that I could offer comments that he agreed with, and we developed a good therapeutic relationship, and he started to make changes, including no longer torturing the cats. So it became possible, but it required me to put myself into a different relationship with him.
Mm-hmm. Now, with that first guy, what do you wish you had done differently in that situation?
I wish that I had made sense of his experience, why it made sense for him. He was so terrified of losing his wife, and that the only way that he knew to keep her was to threaten her, and that if he could successfully threaten her, he could keep the relationship. So if I could go back and redo it, I would have been able to say to him something like, you care so much for her that when she leaves, it devastates you. Something like that. He would have probably agreed with that. And the only way that you know at the time right now is to warn her that she can't leave again. You know she can't leave again because it's going to just tear you apart. And so you'll do anything necessary to keep her from doing that so that you're safe. Unfortunately, what that's doing is making her so that she doesn't feel safe, and that's making it difficult for her to come back to you. I wonder if there's another way for you to stay safe yourself so that it's safe for her to come back and for the two of you to be able to figure something out. Something like that would have allowed him to know that he wasn't a monster and he was frightened. If I'd been too forthright about underscoring how frightened he was, he probably would have rejected it, because for him, the demonstration of anger was felt far stronger than an admission of fear. But I think it would have been possible to get through so that he could have acknowledged that there might be a way for him to be able to manage the complexities of the relationship without using threat as a means of feeling in control.
Mm-hmm. What do early therapists, like, what could they do to build this skill quickly?
Well, you can quickly get off and running, but the building of the skill takes time. It starts with compassionate curiosity, and it also requires the therapist to be able to recognize that it's safe to do it. My student, who didn't want to work with the cat torturing guy, for her it was a matter of integrity. She was a principled person for animal welfare, and for her to connect with this guy would have meant for her to abandon her principles of care. I too am an animal lover. I have 2 dogs, love animals. So it wasn't for me an abandonment of my commitment to the care of animals to be able to connect with a man who was hurting them. It was upholding my integrity as a therapist for me to be able to make sense of why someone could find themselves in such a situation where that was solving a problem. So it has to feel safe, personally and professionally, to be able to do it. Fire up your imagination inside of the curiosity. So you have to be curious about wanting to be able to grasp what's informing the choices, and then to be able to float your best hunches about what it must be like to be inside of his world, and then to be steered by virtue of whether he says you're wrong or yes or kind of but not really, and to use the feedback to refine your understanding. So the empathy becomes not something that you hold inside, but something that you communicate and that you refine in conversation. New therapists being up for being in dialogue with clients to help refine their understanding. And as I said earlier, not claiming that they do, but demonstrating that they are beginning to get a grasp of it. It will develop. The skill will develop.
What about therapists that have been in it for a while? Like you've given a number of kind of tips. Any other tips around kind of what to look for if you've kind of plateaued, and like what, maybe a better question would be, what should we be evaluating of ourselves as a seasoned therapist to make sure our empathy is in line with current research?
I don't know about the evaluation. Because evaluation for me invokes the notion of judgment, and if you're judging yourself, you're judging the other person, you're apart from the situation, you're apart from yourself evaluating, or apart from the client. And I think the best place to hang out, both in relationship to yourself and relationship to the client, is that you're connected. What you can do is become like an improviser. Improv performers live by the credo, yes and they're continually listening incredibly carefully to what the other person is saying, so that what comes out of their mouth is informed by that listening. And they're determining whether where they went is successful if it gives the other performer a platform to then be able to riff in something and elaborate where they're going. Therapy is not unlike that. Client says something to you, listening in such a way that you are offering something that captures the essence or some component of what they're communicating that they can agree with. And if what you're doing is tuning into, is the client making note of the fact that I'm accurately conveying something of what's going on for them. And they'll do that by saying exactly or not really, or no, you're absolutely wrong. And then, as I said earlier, refining your responses in order to get to where the two of you are of one mind, that they are agreeing with your characterization of what their experience is. That's the place to be hanging out for therapy. Once you're there, it's therapeutic alliance, cool stuff happens. Advanced practitioners can recognize that in the offering back of an empathic comment or hunch, it's possible for there to be a therapeutic spin to that. You can be listening for a strength inside of what the client is describing, and so that when you're conveying a characterization of their experience, you do it in a way that upholds or enhances the sense of them having resilience or having creativity or them having a commitment to care or something, so that you're doing therapeutic intervention in the empathic responses that you're offering.
Douglas, the last question I always ask is, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
That it's possible for you to be empathically connected to your clients, and for you to feel interpersonally safe while you're doing it. That it isn't an avenue for burnout, but it actually can allow you to be so very connected, to get into this place of creativity with your clients, and then at the end of the session to be able to leave and come back into yourself, to collect yourself and not bring the client along with you.
So awesome. Douglas, if people want to get your book, where should we send them?
APA, the paperback is coming out in a few days. The ebook is already out. You can get that at Amazon, probably Barnes & Noble, other independent bookstores.
So great. Again, the book is Empathetic Engagement in Clinical Practice, published by APA. Dr. Douglas Flemons, thank you so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Hey, Joe, thanks so much for the conversation. This is wonderful.
You know, I think Douglas is such a great example of following your curiosity, and then as you come up with new things, to share that, whether it's through writing books or creating programs or supervising people. You know, a lot of times I think as therapists, we think that's for other people to do. The APA blesses them, or some publisher blesses them. The true work, the true creativity is you doing that work and putting it out in the world. There's so many platforms now that you can put those ideas, those things that you're seeing work out into the world, whether that's self-publishing, blogging, podcasting, all these different ways that you can share what's working for you and for your clients and the people you supervise in your practice. So I want to encourage you, it being the beginning of the year, I want to encourage you to just go out there and try some new things. Try to conceptualize the work that you've done. You know, if Douglas hadn't taken the time to conceptualize so many different things, he wouldn't have this whole library of books behind him that is genuinely helping the clinical field. And so I want to encourage you, as you enter into the new year, to think through what it is that you're already doing, where you're already seeing results, and to step into those ideas and to form something creative out of those ideas. Also, we couldn't do this show without our amazing sponsors. Today's sponsor is Headway. Headway is who I'm using for my new counseling practice that I'm launching publicly. Been working on it for 5 weeks at the time of this recording. And so we'll be, every single week, I'll be doing an episode talking about the progression of that group practice that I'm starting from scratch. And Headway is one of the ways that we're going to be able to bill insurance so much quicker, get credentialed so much quicker than if we had just done it in other ways. And so the best part is there's no subscription fees. Now is a great time to join as you enter into the new year. Let's make next year the best year for your group practice. Head on over to join.headway.co/Joe to learn more and to get a tour. Again, that's join.headway.co/Joe. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music. And this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.